for several years. I was part of an ashram, so then I was living in California and other parts of the world for some time, teaching a lot of yoga meditation, and more recently, for the last few years, I've been associated with an ashram here called Kailash Ashram, which is here in Rishikesh. It's one of the most ancient ashrams, even before Shivananda Ashram was there. And it is said that Swami Vivekananda and Ramtirtha and all of them stayed there, studied there also. And so it's a very pristine school of Vedanta, as it is called. But today I won't go too much into all that. It is just a get to know you all kind of session. And you all have been doing yoga, and that's why you all are here. But as you all know, yoga is actually founded on certain spiritual philosophy. And in Indian philosophical systems, right, there are totally 6 recognized philosophical systems. And these are, I'm just going to give you a very short introduction, and then we can have a very interactive session after that. Anyone can, we're open to ask questions and all that. But I'll give you just some 10 to 15 minutes introduction, okay? So in Indian philosophical system, there are 6 main recognized philosophical systems. They are called Shad-darsans. Shad is 6. Darshan actually translates in English as philosophy, but it is not exactly philosophy. You know, darshan is actually, it is your perspective of seeing, it's your vision, it's how you perceive things, you know, from your lenses, you can say, from how you see things. So, but besides these 6 darshans, there are also other darshans, other philosophies. And one, of course, many of you are familiar with, the most popular one is called Buddhism. You know, very similar to Buddhism is also Jainism. Now, there is one more philosophical system which doesn't exist today, has a philosophical system, but it does exist in our minds, and it's called as Charwak. And it's called as Charwak. Charwak. So I'll start with Charwak, okay? So what is Charwak is, it is actually a philosophical system where they believe that only the body and that the world you see is the only reality. Okay? So what is philosophy? Philosophy is telling us what reality is. Right? So when you look at reality, for most of us, when we see our eyes, what we see, what we hear through our senses is the reality, right? Like this world we see, these people we interact with, like the food we eat, that is reality for most of us. So for them, they said that is all the reality. There's nothing more to world than that. And this translates so much to what material life is, right? If you look at science says like what you see, you know, the rocks, the earth, the water, that's real in that sense. So how do you live life? That is the second part of philosophy. What is reality? How do you live life? What is the ultimate goal of life? So that is what philosophy answers to us. So here they said like, so there's nothing really you need to do. You just enjoy your life. You just, whatever comes, you enjoy. And you do your life as the best. So they developed a whole system where one of their famous words is, in Sanskrit I'll say first, Runam Kritva Dhritam Pibet. That is the words. What it means is, if you have to live, if you don't have money to live, you borrow money and you drink, eat, be merry. You know? So that was their philosophy. And as you can assume, a lot of people still believe in that, right? Unconsciously or consciously. We all have some belief that as long as I'm happy, I'm having good food, life is good, right? So that is how the Charwak philosophy had developed. Now, that philosophy has such, right? Today you see that it is not so much a recognized philosophy because as time passed, people started asking that, but I go through physical suffering sometimes, right? Like we have some body pains, and along with that, I also experience mental suffering. So, how do I find answers to that? So then the Indian rishis, came up with this thing called Vedas. And all of you are familiar with that. So Vedas is like all this scriptural knowledge of right from the birth to the death and beyond. So they explained everything in the Vedas according to that. But what happened is these Vedas over a period of time, different people understood it differently. And that is how we ended up having 6 darsans, as we call it, 6 philosophies. So the first of that philosophy, so they're all grouped together, okay? And I'm going to talk about this. This is the first 2 philosophies are called Nyaya and Vaisheshika. Nyaya literally means rules or or laws, something like that. So they are very logical. They said only we see, like for example, how do you believe something is real, right? You should see through your eyes or hear through your something, and then you seeing is believing, right? As is popularly said. So that's one way we believe things. Another way we can believe things is if somebody tells you, like for example, coming to Arogya, for example, right? Somebody tells you Rishikesh is a great place, and someone tells you maybe, I've heard of this Arogya school, they are nice people, they do good things, or you read somewhere, and then you have a sense of belief, yeah, okay, maybe this is good, this may be true. And this is called, you are hearing through somebody else, which is called paroksha jnana. So you hear through somebody else. Then there are other things, like what you can do is you can deduce, like it's called as anumana, and there are different things. So each one believes through that. Some others believe there is also this sense of yoga pratyaksha, which is like intuition. I can know through things, intuition. And especially, like sometimes you have a feel, this may be right. Gut feel we call, right? Or sometimes you kind of, like you may even have a sense like you see something and then you experience it. You say, oh, this is like a deja vu. I've been there, done that. Anybody had that? Yeah. So it's like you have a sense like so those are all sources of information also we rely on. But Nyaya believed only on Anumana, what is called as logic. As long as I can logically deduce, then I believe it. So they took the Vedas, only that part which can be logically deduced. Same thing, similar thing with Vaisheshika, I won't go too much into that. And now I come to the area which is most important for all of us, which is Sankhya and Yoga. These two are very closely clubbed together. Sankhya is a philosophical system which is very well structured. It takes logic, it takes also pratyaksha, and it also takes some amount of other forms of deduction. So that is called, now yoga philosophy has such, right? There isn't that structured philosophy in yoga, but it borrows a lot from Sankhya, right? Now, the other system of yoga philosophy, which is more popular or well known, is called as the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So there was a sage Patanjali, and he was also a Sanskrit professor. He was well versed in Ayurveda, and then he said, we need something for our physiological well-being, which includes the body and the mind. Because we all know, it is not just the body that suffers, right? Like when something happens, we also suffer mentally a lot of times. And which the other two I didn't go to, for example, Buddhism, for example, right? They focused a lot on this aspect of mental suffering. One of the first noble truths of Lord Buddha was life is suffering, he said. So his whole teaching kind of starts from that. And then he goes on to say, how do you diagnose suffering? There's a way out of suffering and all that. But we all know that there are other parts to us. There's a body, there's a mind, and then of course there's the intellect, which is a deciding faculty, and And then in Indian systems, they also believe there is a soul. So this whole system, what Sankhya developed, right? There is a system called as Prakriti. Prakriti is everything in nature, right? Like this is the earth, water, all that. They call it as Prakriti. So what they said is, first thing is you try to work with Prakriti. And so when we do yoga, for example, right? We work not just with the body, we also work with prana. Right? We also work with how we regulate the breath. Because that is closely interlinked together. How your breath coordinates, then your also body coordinates, and your mind also coordinates that. So they said all this is part of the Prakriti. Now, if you look at this, right, like for example, let us say this drum, right? Now, if I see this drum, there is somebody who's seeing this. You all can see this drum, right? Do you see this drum has an object, has something that you can see? Yeah? Yeah? So this is an object, right? You can see this clearly. Is this a part of you?
No.
No, right? So it's clearly outside of you. This drum is something you are seeing, it is outside of you, right? So now, let us take for example the same thing. The other people sitting around you, right? Do you have a sense that they are you? No, right? Because you see them as something outside of you. But you feel a connection with them, you feel a sense of one with them, but you recognize them as different from you, right? So what is happening here is, I am the observer, and this is what I'm observing. So this becomes the observed, right? So we call it as drishta, drishya. Okay, this is like the Sanskrit words. I am observing this. Okay, so the drishya and drishta. Now, if you take the same analogy a little further, right? When you actually are sleeping, or whenever you are this one, you wake up in the morning and then you realize, oh, my arm is hurting or something, you slept on one side. And then you realize, you say that my arm, right? So it is not exactly you as such. You're saying it is mine, but it is somewhat, there's a distinctness between you, the observer, and what you've observed. Right? Now you take this further, this whole body is something that is in your awareness. Right? So there is somebody in you that is aware that you have a body. Is everyone following me? So far everyone's able to follow? Okay. Now the same, one more step if you go, even your thinking, your thoughts, right? So these thoughts also come and go, isn't it? Right? So this is what the Sankhya philosophy is actually saying, that there is this Prakriti, right? Prakriti is, you think the Prakriti is made of 5 elements generally, earth, water, air, space, very good, you all know that, okay? So now what they're saying is, even this body is actually nothing but that. And it doesn't take much, this one, to understand that, right? Like the body, if you really look at it, like you eat something and the body grows, you feed it with water, or you drink water, then it grows. So all that the body is made of these constituents. So then they say, if the body dies, for example, like somebody is dead, right? I mean, when you see somebody is dead, you should be able to just pump water into them, and today you have this one where you can feed some food into them. But why doesn't the body come into life? Right? So, if you go by logic, if the body is just made of these constituents, then you should be able to just pump all these things and the body should come into life. But what Sankhya people said is, it is not coming to life because that Purusha, that Chaitanya is not there anymore. So this is the philosophy they came up with. There is a Purusha and there is a Prakriti. So this is what we call as, sometimes it is called as spirit and matter. there is spirit, there is matter. You know? So this, everyone's following me so far, right? Any question or any thoughts anybody has? Okay, so this is a basic foundation. Okay, now taking this a little further, right? Came up this Purva Mimamsa, as they are called. What they said is there is this Purusha aspect, which is a spirit aspect. They say it goes from life to life. They say it is not just this life, but it reincarnates. It comes back, it takes another body, it forms another matter, and then it. So this philosophy of reincarnation is what they came up with. And they said, so if you look at life, we come to some point and we realize that, like for example, like if you like gulab jamun, right? Or if you like a pizza or whatever, right? Chocolate or whatever. After, if you eat one, it's nice. After two, you're okay. Third, like, okay, I've had enough. But after four, like, you don't want to eat it anymore. So they say life is like that, you know. There is an end to happiness from objects. So what they're saying is that you should seek a happiness beyond this life. So they came up with this whole Veda Shastras, where you recite mantras, you do rituals, and like as you all did the Havan, you know, when you all started. So you invoke certain deities to help you. And so all this became like a ritualistic part of how you can also gain happiness in the next life, not just in this life. And that's how all this thing in Indian things, as you know, there is also, you do certain pujas for like those elder departed ones, you know, ancestors, because they believe. Shad, very good, yes. Shad, and there is also like, you know, a lot of samskaras where you help them in the life beyond, in their journey beyond, because we believe this Purusha entity goes on and you try to help it to the higher, this one. Okay, so now the last philosophy that I will talk about, and this philosophy, of course, I can talk about for hours, but I'll just talk for 5 minutes, okay? This is the last philosophy, and this is the philosophy of Vedanta. The word literally translates as Veda Anta, end of Vedas, or you can take it as the essence of Vedas. Okay, what they said is, yes, it is true that there is a Purusha, yet it is true there is a Prakriti. You know, as you all understand these words by now, right? Prakriti is like matter, you can say. Purusha is spirit. They say, yes, there is spirit, there is matter. And you can also come to the conclusion somehow that there is somehow some God who is actually kind of regulating all this, right? Like for example, Sankhya didn't believe that there is God. So when, at the time of Buddha, for example, he followed a lot of Sankhya philosophy. So he also said there is no God, but there is nature. There is laws of nature, what they call as dharma. You know, they call it, the dharma they say is different to the dharma in Indian philosophy. They say dharma controls everything. So the last point here that I'm going to say is that what Vedanta actually came up with is, even if you believe that there is God, right? There has to be somebody who is aware of the God. In that sense, like how I am aware of my own body, I am aware of creation, there has to be something else, right? And this they call it as the ultimate cause of creation, or the ultimate cause which exists beyond creation also, you know, which lasts during creation, beyond creation, and the dissolution of creation. So this existence, this aspect of Vedanta, you know, which is called, it is more practical. It is in one way also practical, but it also seems very theoretical. And the way to know it practically is to kind of take it as space. Okay. Now in this space, right, for example, this room, if you imagine, we are all seated here, right? Few minutes after this class, we will all go. But does this space go? It is still there, right? That space in this room will still stay there. Now, like different things may happen here, like the sounds may come and other things might come. but this space will remain as it is, isn't it? So this aspect of space, right? And I like to encourage you all at this point, if you want, we can just try to, just for 5 minutes, we'll do a meditation on this, okay? It's a very simple meditation and I'll call it a space meditation, okay? So you will not need to, you can sit comfortably also. For the first few minutes, we will keep our eyes open, okay, for the first few minutes. And now, when you actually sit here, you kind of try to get a feel that there is a space here, okay? So in this space, you are seated, right? So you can't see it, so you don't need to focus on anything, you don't need to concentrate on anything, you don't need to kind of shut out anything. Everything you feel, just feel that space is there. Now in this space, you feel like there is, some of us may be moving, some movements may be happening, right? And now try to see this space which is outside is also the space that is inside you. Now don't need to concentrate, you don't need to shut out anything. If you feel you're getting some thoughts, right? If you feel you're getting disturbed by some thoughts, now try to move a step further and see that there is a space in your mind also. And in this space of the mind, your thoughts are coming and going. Now I'll call this space also as silence, for example. Okay. So in this there is a pervading silence. You can hear maybe some sound of the water or the clock or something, but in between that there is a silence. So now you can slowly, if you like, close your eyes and see if you can feel that silence. You can feel that silence either in your heart or your mind or whatever you feel comfortable. Feel that silence is nothing but the space which allows everything to come and go. Your thoughts come and go in that silence. The sounds come and go in that silence. And even if you have a thought that, oh, I'm not following, or this is not something I can do, even that is a thought that just comes and goes. If you have a thought that, oh, this is great, this is cool, even that is nothing but a thought that comes and goes. So you are just nothing but an observer of everything that is coming and going. So as an observer, you are not affected by anything. If you have some thought or something that grabs your attention, you realize that it comes and goes. Nothing will stay for always. So you just become aware it is coming, you become aware that it's going. You can now slowly, as you're ready, continue with that meditation that you're aware of everything. And gently, if you want, you can also open the eyes. But stay in that meditation state where you see that everything is coming, everything is going. There are sounds, there are objects that's moving, there may be smell, there may be thoughts, but you are nothing but the drishta or the observer who is unaffected by any of this. that pure state. Even some feeling that I like this, I don't like this, that is nothing but a thought. And like that space, it comes and goes without disturbing that space. You can take a couple of deep breaths, fill your lungs with oxygen, and let go. Once more, take a deep breath, let go. And now, after you let go, just feel that peace, feel that space, feel that stillness. Remain in that stillness. And there's also a sense of awareness in that. And gently you can open your eyes and relax. So what we did with this is that we are trying to bring this philosophy into our experience. When we do something, right? When we are doing yoga or when we are doing something, if you have a sense of understanding of what is happening, if you have a sense of why you are doing this, what is the goal of that, right? You'll be more motivated and it will also penetrate into your day-to-day life experience. Right? So this is how, we have to find a way where we use some of these practices we do or things that we learn and translate it into our life. Because then our life actually will have a much more definitive purpose. Or else what happens is that we are going by what is called as whims and fancies. Like whatever we feel like we do. And generally what happens is if we don't have a proper understanding, if we don't, and all of you, many of you working and all, right? Like every time you set, when you want to reach something in a corporation, you set a vision, you make a goal, right? And then according to that goal, you make other plans. And then according to that, you gather data, what is possible, you do what is good, what is bad, and then you act upon it. So similarly, our life, when we have an understanding of what is the philosophy behind these things, we're able to direct things accordingly. Okay? So this is just an overview I wanted to give you of the darshan, and if possible, we'll continue with a little more practical things in the next couple of sessions. Okay? But I'm happy to take, if you have any thoughts, questions, feel free to let me know. How was the whole experience for you so far? Anything that you connected to, anything that you didn't connect to? You're all welcome to share. I think our feel based on that. Okay. As time goes, sometimes you'll be able to feel something with some meditation too. Even if you don't get that feeling, that is not important. As long as you're understanding what it is all about, So this idea was to get you a sense, like when you look at the space, right? In this space, things come and go. Objects come and go. So the same thing is there in the space of our mind, right? There is a space in our mind where thoughts are coming and going. And if you think like one thought is more important, you'll be obsessed with that thought. And that is why, a lot of people go through like trauma or psychological stuff and all that. Because you're not able to let thoughts pass through you. So this is, understanding level is good for now. And if you can, try to practice it even 1 or 2 minutes, slowly. Sometimes the understanding, that experience also comes later. But it's not just the meditation that I was teaching here. I was teaching you more the philosophy. Next few classes, we will go a little more into meditation. Okay, the first time itself, I didn't want to jolt you all with, because I don't know how many of you practice for how long meditation. So it's just 10.
And initially, I had a rush of thoughts, like so many thoughts.
So many thoughts, yeah.
Initially.
Right. You know, the reason that we see so many thoughts, it's that it is not that those thoughts were not there. When you still the mind, you suddenly realize that there are so many thoughts that you're not aware of. And but if you stay with that for a while, like, then it's like all these pebbles of water. Slowly, settle down. Yeah. So that's why sometimes what you can do is you can take like a mantra. Even like simple chanting of Om.
That helps.
Yeah, that.
When we do asanas and stuff, initially we do that. It really comes.
Yes.
The vibration of the sound.
Yes, the vibration of the sound. You can keep chanting that Om, 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 and then get into it. Any questions on the philosophical aspect?
Yeah. So I was trying to observe all those things, like you sitting there,
right,
friends sitting here, some people's breaths going here, there,
yes.
dogs. Yes. So I'm trying to observe that power. I'm trying to generate, to think what all things is happening in the space.
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong, I think that is what we want to observe.
Absolutely.
So like what's happening outside this space to the outside space, like the rain's happening, the heat, like trying to sense it with all those senses that we have.
Right.
So I was trying to observe it. So maybe I'm not so,
No, that's what I said. We all are not expecting to be an expert in a day. These are all practices. I think right now what we're trying to understand is that these things are possible. See, like all these philosophical systems, right? People have thought about it so much. They spend so much time on that. And you can see that these are all not like people who have no job. They have left everything to focus on that. Because they believe that there is some higher reality than what my senses are giving me or experiencing me at this moment. Most of us, like what our life, how it wavers, right? Like we wake up in the morning, what do I want to do? I like this, I will do it. I don't like this, I won't do that. So our life is caught between doing things I like and pushing away things that I don't like. So that is all that spectrum of our experience as such. So what these people did is they went beyond that. They said that beyond our daily experiences, there is some deeper reality. There is some underlying reality. And this reality is where we all take birth in, we exist and then we pass away kind of thing. But in that truth, you are existing all the time. And that is what they're saying. So this sense of spirit, which Sankhya talks about, it is this not something you can experience through your eyes, ears and all that. And that is what I was trying to tell you, like when you look at this drum, your eyes is looking at this drum, right? And now you have your eyes also, the fact that you're seeing this, how do you know that? By looking at it. But you know that you're looking at it, right? There is an awareness, there is a mind, you can say, right? There is a mind, there is a thought that knows that you are looking at it. But now, what we were trying to do in our meditation is, there is something that knows the thought also, right? For example, now if you think, let us say we all think of an elephant, right? There's a thought of an elephant. Now, aren't you aware that you're thinking of elephant? Right? So, what is that is aware that you are even thinking of the elephant? The knowledge, yeah. So that awareness or the knowledge that you call, right? That is what they're saying is a deeper reality of ourselves which we don't even know about. We're not even aware of that. And one way to do that is to see that in space or in silence. Like for example, another short meditation which we can do is like, we can all do this. Let's chant Om, okay? And every time between the Om, you give some silence, just for a second. Can we try that?
Yeah.
Okay. So first you will do loudly, all of us together, okay? So we'll chant Just relax, feel that silence. One more time. Just try to feel that silence. Recognize that now there is no sound except that silence. The same thing mentally. I'll just chant, but you all do mentally. Om. To recognize at least, that in between the sounds there is a silence, Because there is silence, there is sound. If you really look at it, that silence makes that sounds possible. Right? So this is what is the deeper layer of our existence. There is something else. And that we can take either a space or silence or what these people call as Purusha or Atma, the deeper nature of our being. And it is very hard if we are so intellectually caught up sometimes. We try to figure out, like, okay, what is this exactly, where it is exactly. But you have to try to feel this at this point. Okay, that is when it becomes real. Good? Okay. Alright, so we'll go a little deeper. I didn't want to give you all too much in one session. You're welcome to also ask anything in the next few sessions. Yeah.
As you said, there is something beyond this materialistic world and the happiness. How can we go beyond that happiness, beyond that materialistic world?
How? So you're already doing that now in a way, because you have come here for learning yoga, right? So that is already the first step. Okay, that's the first step, but that's not all, that's the first step. The reason why it is the first step is because you come here because you know that what you are pursuing in the world outside is not the ultimate happiness, right? Because if you had complete belief that whatever job or whatever you are doing outside was happiness, you would not have come here. Is everyone getting me on that? Does everyone believe that? Like some of you have come from abroad, I mean, why do you come from there? Because if you knew that if all happiness was there, wherever you were, like UK, Canada, US, or wherever, right? Then you would not have come here. And same for those of you, whether you come from Assam, Chandigarh, or Kerala, whatever. You come because you know that objects that you think was giving you happiness is not the ultimate happiness. So you don't need to analyze this. There is already some feeling in you that is telling you. So first you trust that and you come here. The next aspect to discovering that is actually two steps. One is to use that feeling as well to give you that confidence until you have faith in it. Second is actually to do this inquiry. This what we were doing until now. So in one way, in what is called as the 7 steps of yoga, okay, the first step of yoga, which is for the path of knowledge or path of ultimate happiness, is called as Shubha Icha. Shubhecha it is called. That is, you wish for something better. You wish for some happiness which is beyond this sensory happiness. That is the first step of yoga, or the first step for happiness. The second step is to do vichara. Vichara is to use your intellect and to kind of see that, is this thing that I was thinking will give me happiness, And if you think that is, then you can just look at all the lives of all these great Hollywood stars or Bollywood stars and all that, who you think have everything, right? But then you see the quality of their life, then you realize that something is missing. So that is how your viveka or vichara kind of starts. And the third step, again you do when you do yoga practice here, is it becomes thanu manasa. Your mind starts becoming subtle. And when the mind starts becoming subtle, then you will be able to appreciate all these little things, like what we talked about, this silence, this space, or just this ability to know that I have so many thoughts. See, when you are sitting with your smartphone, you are continuously doing this and that. You will never know that my mind is so restless. But the moment you sit down, you pause for a while and just take a breath and you realize like, oh my God, I was so restless, So that is the third step towards happiness, So I will leave it at 3 steps for this time, but I think that gives you an idea, right? But that's a very good question. It all starts with that question. How do you find? So questioning is very good in that sense. We have to question life. Otherwise, what happens is we are caught up in the rat race of life, and we never realize that, this is where it is taking us. Manisa, did you have any question? You had your hand raised. Were you able to follow? How about you?
I'm fine.
Yeah. You? Okay, so we'll say a prayer to close this, and I will say it in Sanskrit. You can repeat after me. Okay, and I will explain that prayer later. Okay. Om. Chant after me. Om. Asatoma Sadgamaya.
Asatoma Sadgamaya.
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya.
Mrityoma Amritam Gamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
The meaning of this sloka, this mantra, is lead us from the unreal to the real. Asatoma Sadgamaya. Okay? Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, from darkness to light. So we may think we are already in light. Why do we have to go to this one? But this is the darkness of our mind. That is what is said. It's called as ignorance, because the biggest problem there, the Vedas and all say, is our sense of ignorance. We don't know the reality. We don't know about God or about ourselves. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. From death to immortality. And we may say, like, how is it possible? Because everybody has to die, you know. And this is where I explain this thing about this Purusha or Atma and all that. They say the sense of the spirit will never die. So once we realize that, then there is really no death to that body. And then Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, we have peace. Thank you for being patient listeners.